Good morning, everyone. And from all, I think the winner of the longest distance Zoom in goes to Jeffrey Dunham from Costa Rica. Morning, Jeff.
I don't know where John is. He looks like he's in Tahoe or something like that. Looks beautiful.
Montana.
John is in Whitefish. When you build a company, when you build a family historic company, you get it to the point where it can run, where you get to live at a place like that too. Is that true, John?
That's true. Very true.
And they're getting their first snow today. Yay.
Yep. Yes, we are. It's always exciting, and yeah.
Well, good morning to you all. Please, you lead off.
Yeah, thank you. So as most of you know, we do this on a every other month basis, business owner interviews. So interviewing some of our clients or some of our EPI board members' clients to just talk about what it's been like for them as they've either had a pass on from a generation or a transition or considering a transition, all different phases of that business exit or succession plan that goes on. And so this morning we have one of our good friends and a longtime client that has graciously agreed to let Joe interview him. So John.
So over the next half hour or so, our goal on each of these calls is, or on each of these Zooms, is to get an inside look or kind of behind the curtain, if you will, into a business owner's mind. What drives them, what made them think this way, what made them look at advisors the way they do, and how it went on. John has been a client for quite some time. John originally came to us, not from the business side, but from the family governance side, both within his family and then within the company. And then we went through the battle of COVID together on the business side of things. So the battle of COVID of what do you do? Who do you keep? Who do you lay off? How do you run? All of that aggravation. How do you deal with your co-owners? How do you deal with government regulations as they're changing during it? And has since come way out ahead and kept their market share. So good morning, John.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
So John, the business that you now own started as what?
The business started and still is honeycomb manufacturing. We do the honeycomb engine seals for the turbine engines that we all fly around in. And simply put, it's more of from a layman's term, I don't know if anybody's in the aerospace business, but it acts like a seal for the engine. So when the blades are spinning around and sucking in the air and creating the combustion, it's rubbing up. There's a rub seal that rubs up against the honeycomb. Looks like a bee's honeycomb, and it's just made out of metal. And it's something we did not invent. It was something my father was in the industry before, from 1965 all the way till his passing of 2014, and working for a company in San Diego called Jet Air. And he was just basically just an employee there. And let's see, back in 1987, that company was bought out by a big corporation. And 6 months later, my dad was laid off and became a little bit of a panic time for us in the family. I was 19 years old, and he needed my help to start the business, to do the back office stuff. And being an immigrant from Brazil, he came here in 1963. And then my mother subsequently came about a year and a half after that. And so my sister and myself were both born here. We're first generation Americans. And we started this honeycomb business, which was a department within their whole company that he used to work for. And he knew that when they would ship the assemblies, if the honeycomb wasn't there from their department, they'd have to go out to market. When they went out to market to buy honeycomb, it was essentially a 10 to 15 week lead time. Take my price. There was pretty much one guy selling it to the market. Everybody else had their own departments. And he picked a great product to get into, and I picked a great business to get into with my dad, because it's been a very niche business ever since we started back in 1989.
Perfect. And then with that, what was it just the two of you when you first started?
Yep. And then we just started in our garage. Literally, it's not much to these machines to make. It's just conceptually and understanding what the market is and the customers. And so literally, again, Joe, stop me. I don't know how far you want me to go into
No, it's
these
okay.
stories. I know you have a whole bunch of questions, but he had me start reaching out to the GEs of the world and Pratt Whitney and Rolls Royces, and one lady, Patty Henry. I'll never forget. I'll share this one story, and then we can move on. I reach out to her, and I say, hey, listen, we're a new honeycomb company. We'd love to be a vendor to GE. And this is back in the late 80s, early 90s, when Jack Welch had taken over, and they were reducing all of their vendor base from about 35,000 down to like 7,000. And so they were just not adding any vendors, except if you were minority owned. And at the time when I was 19 years old, I didn't really, I thought minority was just, I didn't really understand what it was, and which company or which countries would fall into that. So we were just talking. She says, I can only add if you're a woman-owned or minority business. And I says, well, my parents are from Brazil, and does that count? And they said, well, she obviously gets bonused by bringing on these types of vendors, because they get a lot of government business. And I says, well, it's in the Hispanic region. I guess we can call that. She says, absolutely. And she says, okay, we'll be out there in 3 weeks to survey your shop. And subsequently they came out, and then I take that back. We didn't even have a shop. We were in our garage at the time. We had to go rent. We had to go rent a little unit there
for them to see.
Yeah, exactly. And we had to build 3 more machines. It was kind of a little panic time. So, and something my dad knew about this business. These guys come out from Cincinnati in February, and he says, hey, they just want to come out and go to the beach and have it, see some sun, because it's so cold in February in Ohio. And again, I'll just quickly finish this one. It's a funny story. So we ended up hiring some family members to come in. We ended up building a total of 3 machines, put a bunch of honeycomb on the wall, and made it look like we have a full-fledged business. And so we hired my family and my cousins and stuff. I said, okay, stand in front of machines when these guys get here, make it look like you're an operator, but don't touch the machine. We don't want you touching it. So they showed up, and then they come in, they do a quick little tour. It says, great. And my dad says, okay, let's go have some dinner and or some lunch. And from then on, we got our approval, and it's been great ever since.
So from the two of you and then some family members standing in front of machines, how many employees today?
Today we have 158 employees. We are on pace for 2023 of doing 23 million. And
then,
it's been
when was
Go
the
ahead.
dip in revenue in these last years? You were up to what number, you went down to what number, and you went up to what number again?
Joe, it's been an industry where we just it very slow growth, but it's always, we didn't have a lot of this until obviously COVID was probably much our biggest retraction of sales, where we came off of a year of I think it was $26 million in 2017, and then just kind of leveled off from there. And then COVID hit. Obviously, we dropped down to 14 million, and that was something that was, again, the beauty of this product is when the engines are brand new, they need honeycomb, and when it's federally regulated, that it needs to be maintained after so many hours or cycles, depending on the engine. And so we're also on the overhaul and repair side. So that's the beauty. We don't have a lot of dips. When the new engine build is down, the overhaul and repair is up, and vice versa.
Perfect. Now, what percentage, now you do this for commercial. So I flew in a
Correct.
plane last week. I'm flying next week. I probably am looking at that. You also do some military. We don't know the percentage of military market share, but what's that part of the commercial market share would you say your company has?
We have we estimate, Joe, about 45% right now of the market share.
So that's significant.
Yes.
So your dad, how did he choose his advisors? Did he have an attorney, CPA, financial advisor?
He did. It was mostly, my dad was a very simple person. His advisors were his friends. You know, he was not one. He had a fourth grade education when he came from Brazil, and he's just one of those guys that's street smart. And when I was there, quickly I found out he was leaning on me to, you know, to understand this stuff, even though I didn't go to business school. So one of his advisors were essentially a CPA, and
Sure.
that's all we had for a long time. And then I figured, okay, we need some more. As we were growing, now we're getting more global with customers, and I didn't really know. And then we got asked to bid a government job, and I get this stack of paperwork that's this thick, and I didn't know what to do with it, to bid a job just for a $1,000 purchase order. And that's when he says, hey, go out and find somebody. And I asked one of the advisors to hook me up to somebody. So it kind of worked out to where how do I want to say it? It's just that, once I started bringing in the advisors, he would kind of listen in and make the decision of, who we should be using or not.
What is the difference in your decision style with advisors from your dad's?
At the time, it was experience and age.
Right.
And, are you talking about back then or now?
Well, your dad said, friends, okay, go out and find one of our friends who's an advisor. We'll introduce somebody. I'll listen to him and I'll see if I gut level think he's good. And then your dad would choose that advisor and ride with it for a while. How's that different than your style now from your choosing your advisors these last 5 or 10 years?
It's not too much, because as I've grown and matured, Joe, I've kind of learned to get that gut now through all the experiences and mistakes. But yeah, in general, it was just word of mouth. If somebody, like how we found you, Lisa knew, oh gosh, help me, Joe. What's her name that introduced? Carmen, thank you. Sorry, I just completely skipped that. Carmen, Lisa knew Carmen from a tennis, group that she was with. And so it's just one of those, scenarios where word of mouth and the friendships.
And then you've had some successes with advisors, both people you hired, you had the company and or outside advisors, some successes and some failures. True?
Well, it depends on what you mean by failures. For me, it wasn't. It was a failure because my partner, we didn't see eye to eye. So it was hard to kind of see something through. So by the time we started doing something, I've done my homework, Joe, to find out if they're going to be, good for me in the business.
What do you know now as a business owner that you wish you would have known 10 years ago? And what do you know now that you wish you knew 20 years ago?
Yeah, it just, on the advisor side, I would probably say, and this is what I constantly push up here, because essentially I've become more of a friend to business owners up here in Montana, of just saying, surround yourself with a good team, And so back then, my father was very reluctant to surround more than just somebody, one person at a time or whatever else, where it's just more of a team approach.
Right.
Everybody has their different strengths. And since then, and again, shortly thereafter, I was introduced to, at the time it was called Tech, and now it's called Vistage. And that became my way of learning really about the business and the, learning how to, run a business from a business perspective, business owner perspective versus just trying to make it happen. And it shortened up all my mistakes and learning curve.
Sure.
Not sure if I answered your question there, but
No, it did, by all means. When you look at numbers now, the numbers for the company, do you notice that you see them differently than you did 5 or 10 years ago?
5 or 10 years ago, no, but definitely 20 years ago for sure. Once I understood, and that was one of the biggest things that I got out of speaking to my advisors, is having to learn the numbers and the P&L and the balance sheet. And that's, again, is something that I constantly preach to people, business owners that I meet with up here and have coffee, because I kind of just want to pay it forward. And that's what I've chosen to do up here in Montana. And so the biggest thing is just, you got to know your numbers, and anybody that will tell you about a business, regardless if it's something that I'm, I've kind of just moved into the restaurant business here with my son and kind of recreating it, or the aerospace business. Business is business, and the numbers are the numbers. If you don't know them, if you don't know your numbers, you're going to have really tough decisions, making.
At one point, you ended up reaching the point where you said, our internal numbers guy, our CFO, our accountant, whoever it is not providing us what we need. What was it like finding that? And then how did you go about fixing it?
Yeah, the original tax person or CPA for the business was a friend of my father's who did personal taxes. And growing from, zero to, I'd probably say about $5-6 million, you can kind of run it, with that style. But then you kind of need to have some business acumen and a team surrounded around that. So once the business, started passing $5 million, and we started actually making money and trying to figure out how to, not pay the taxes that, or creatively ways to use your money, that was something that, where I felt I pushed my father to say, hey, we need to bring in a different advisor. And he recognized that, because I couldn't make any. He would ask me what to do, and I'm like, it's really hard to make a decision without knowing some numbers here. That Steve, and very good friend of the family still, but like, hey, he recognized that we needed to move on.
So at that point, all of you knew, and you had to go find some outside people.
Right.
How has it been? When you lost your dad, did he exit the business in 1 year, or was it over a period of time?
No, I tell people he died with his boots on. So he didn't really exit the business, with the exception, I guess, if you were to say, that the business became, he was the face of the business from an operation point of view. Yeah, that was probably about 15, 18 years, but he would just obviously show up and, be the face of the business. That was something he loved to do, just go in the back. And, at the end of the day, as I was assembling the team to run the business, he would just come in and just obviously know where all the dark corners are to say, hey, go take care of this, or I just saw something in the back. He just became another great set of eyes for the business. And that's how we were able to really thrive together. He didn't really care about the operations or the numbers, because he was just very simple. He just says, I want to see $1 million cash in my bank, and we put it in there. And then I want to see 2 million. We, put it in there. It was just, he had a very, very simple way of.
Okay, go away.
Yeah, pretty much.
Very cool. Have you ever considered selling the business or selling your interest?
There was a point, again, mostly because of the friction at one point with my sister and myself prior to meeting you, Joe, where you came in and helped us kind of get back together. Let's see, 2016, between 2016 and 17. It was to the point where the friction of the ownership of my sister and myself was just so high that I'm like, let's just sell the business. And she was kind of on that same boat. And we hired private equity to kind of come in and give us the evaluation and do the whole thing. But we never went to the very end to actually put it on the market. By that time, something in myself was saying, continue to look at it as, let's try to figure this out. Or, because I have kids, Lisa has kids. It's this. My father's intention was to have it be a generational business.
Very much. So I'd like to throw it out to the audience. Are there any questions out there that you'd like to ask?
So Joe, I have a question.
Yeah.
John, I love your story. Two questions. Is your sister at all in the business anymore and part of what you decide that you want to do long term with that business? That's question one. And then question two, what do you worry about now? What professionally, what keeps you up at night?
Yeah, good question. Yes, my sister is there. Again, through working it out with Joe, was very, very instrumental of putting us back together and working out our differences. She is there. She's a CEO. She's been doing that function now since 2020, 2000, almost 19 maybe. Prior to that, she wasn't really in a type of capacity to management of the business. And so what keeps me up at night, remind me again,
Yeah.
Jeff,
Professionally, what do you worry about now?
Good question.
Other than the big fish you want to catch, in Montana in the summer.
At the end of the day, if honestly, from a business, I'll answer two questions. One, the business side of it, really, we've really found ourselves in a really, really good spot where the business, there's only 4 companies that do what we do in the world and that provide this honeycomb into this market. We're the number one. The other 3 are really starting to fade off here because of the market is changing. And similar to my father's old company, most people just have a department of honeycomb that also sell to the market. We're the only ones that are strictly honeycomb providers, and that's what one of our strengths is. That's all we do. I tell people we're the In-N-Out burger of our industry. That's all we do is make burgers, and we're really, really good at it. People know us about it. From that perspective, as long as we keep on understanding what's going on in the market share, there's really no threat of new product coming in, even though there's 3D manufacturing. By the time we'll be able to adjust anytime that was to happen. From a personal perspective, we're really just watching over in an ownership perspective, Jeff. As long as my sister continues to grow as, let's say, I did, or put herself with advisors, because my biggest fear is she stops listening to people and she's just going to go down this path by herself. Because unlike myself at my time when I was running the business, there was my father there and there was a good balance. Without myself being there, this thing could shift very quickly. And my sister, I'd have to step in and, but I really try not to do that. And when we do, I'll kind of ask for Joe's help on that.
John, you did a great job of articulating your relationship with dad. He gets laid off, 19 years old. Now find yourself in a position where dad's saying, okay, I trust you, go figure out this government contract thing. Can you help paint the picture of your relation or your sister's relationship with your father? How old was she whenever your dad got laid off? And then up until he had passed, what did that relationship look like between the two of them?
Sure. Yeah, her relationship with him was very much so. Again, being from Brazil, Latin American, it was a very masculine culture, and it was just kind of like the son. I am younger by my sister by 15 months, but I've always been somewhat the older, just because mostly I'm the boy of the family. And my sister's relationship with him was basically he really wanted her to be part of the business because of his lack of experience / education as to what to do, how to grow her, because he just wanted her to be a masculine person, come in and this is how you do it. And obviously she had a different view of life. So when she did try to come in there, it was very emotional and very little logic. And that would really frustrate my father. So he said, Lisa, just go home, take care of your kids, here's some money. And so he didn't really do her, I tell her this all the time, he didn't really do her any service by, being that way. One, he didn't know what else to do. So he just took care of her and made sure she had money to do what she needed to do. And in the end, it didn't really change that much. I mean, every time she would come in, she would say, okay, just do this, run this department, or be part of HR or whatever else. But she didn't really get very much involved in the business until after he passed. And then it was just kind of like, okay, Lisa, let's make this thing, because we've always had the plan is for us to take over the business.
Very cool. Thank you. And thank you, Theron. I want to thank everybody for being here today. John, thank you for being so kind and giving us kind of a glimpse in. Very much it was that kind of insight that often we miss as advisors, because we have our lanes that we're really good at. We talk to our clients about those things, but it's how you got here and how you process now, how you choose all of us, and what's important to you that really drives our best engagements. As everybody on the call knows, Shelley and I often speak of the quality of the relationship with the advisor and client is more indicative of success than the rate of return.
I would agree with that.
When you've got a great relationship with the advisors, the entrepreneur challenges the advisors to be the best of who they are. And it's through that partnership and through interacting with what's in your mind, John, that we are able to do stuff together that's better than we would have done had you thought of it alone, or we as advisors thought of it alone. So the quality of that relationship and the partnership drives different outcomes and better outcomes. So outcomes get driven by that more than rates of return. And John, you've proven that by how you're working with advisors now too. So John, thank you very much. Shelley and Ella, thank you. And thank you all out there. Jeff and Theron, thank you for the questions as well.
All right. Thank you,
See y'all
guys.
soon.
Enjoy the snow, John.
Thanks, John.
All
Enjoy
right,
the snow
bye-bye.
today. Send me a picture.
Bye.
Will
Bye.
do.